So Brett Kavanaugh has himself a little scandal here, and little perhaps is not the right word. He's being accused of sexual assault. Now, we already knew that this was the case already. We had the rough outline of this story, but it was an anonymous accuser, and now that accuser has stepped forward and given her name and given details of what happened. The Republicans are on, they've decided, okay, well, now it's time to do counterattacks, and so they're going after this woman. Let me go ahead and give you the breakdown of exactly what the story is. This is from Judd Legum. He said, to review, Kavanaugh's accuser is now on the record. Her name is Christine Blasey Ford. Ford has offered a detailed account of sexual assault by Kavanaugh. Ford's account corroborated by therapist notes from 2012, and Ford passed a polygraph test by former FBI agent. So I think it even gets a little weirder than that, because apparently there was one dude in the room with Brett Kavanaugh and Christine as this happened, and then people went to go look up what the deal was with this dude. They found a YouTube channel, and it was the creepiest YouTube channel I've ever seen, where he's got like recordings of young girls doing relatively normal things, I guess, but the fact that he's like a creepy middle-aged dude and his YouTube channel is all like kind of semi-sexual younger girls doing things, it's like, whoa, what is going on over here? Do we stumble across some like secret society shit? I mean, that's kind of what it feels like. So now, of course, you have Democrats calling for slowing down this process of getting Brett Kavanaugh confirmed. If I'm not mistaken, there's at least one Republican who's decided to break ranks, and he said, yeah, you know what, we should slow this down. That Republican was Jeff Flake. Jeff Flake is not up for re-election, so he probably feels like he has a little more leeway to do some stuff that might not be popular among the other Republicans. So that's where we're at right now. It looks like this might stop his confirmation completely, but I urge caution on that front, because you had a very similar situation with Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill from back in the day, and we all know that Clarence Thomas ended up getting on the court. So I'm here to tell you not just what I've already told you about the allegations against Kavanaugh. I'm here to tell you that even if you put the allegations aside, on the merits, on his judicial philosophy or lack thereof, he should never be on the court. So, I spoke about it when Brett Kavanaugh was announced as potentially the next Supreme Court justice, and I'm going to talk about it again right now. His record is devastatingly horrible. So he ruled against abortion in a 2015 case, and that perhaps is a little hint as to how he'll rule on abortion issues moving forward. So here's a guy who might actually, have some decisions that at least chip away at women's reproductive rights. This is a guy who thinks that Obamacare is totally unconstitutional. That should concern people if you care about protections for pre-existing conditions, for example. And remember, the Supreme Court had a weird middle ground decision on Obamacare when they heard cases on it, where they said, okay, aspects of it are not constitutional, but parts of it are constitutional. And so they made it so that states had to approve the Medicaid expansion, for example. That's one aspect of the Supreme Court case on Obamacare. But Kavanaugh is the guy who said, no, all of it is unconstitutional. If that's not enough for you, Kavanaugh thinks that net neutrality is unconstitutional. So in other words, even if, let's say you have Democrats in power and Democrats decide net neutrality is the way to go, like what happened under Obama when he decided, no, we're going to keep the net neutrality regulations in place. Kavanaugh says, no, you're not even allowed to have net neutrality, even if you have an administration that's in favor of net neutrality, because those FCC regulations, by their very nature, are unconstitutional. So it's basically like saying you can have no net neutrality regulations that keep the internet free and open and equal. he thinks, and we covered this recently, that a president can maybe pardon himself. He would not say no when asked the question, can Donald Trump pardon himself? That scares me because that would absolutely obliterate rule of law even beyond the point where it's already been obliterated, and I think it has been obliterated with stuff like the Patriot Act and no due process and things of that nature. So that's scary, man. He also thinks the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which we got in the wake of the subprime mortgage crisis and the Great Recession, it was Elizabeth Warren who fought to get us the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It returned billions of dollars to defrauded Americans. Probably the best thing the government's done in decades. And this jackass says the entire agency is unconstitutional. You cannot have an agency that regulates big business and the financial sector on behalf of the American people. That's not allowed. He's very hostile to secularism, and he's friendly to theocracy. He, on the birth control issue with Obamacare, he says, no, an employer can decide, I don't want my employee to have birth control coverage because I have a religious disagreement with birth control, so I will now enforce that on my employees. This guy says, yeah, theocracy is wonderful, no separation of church and state, and let the employer control the employee. He thinks having experts in the EPA and the FDA crafting regulations to address problems, he thinks that's unconstitutional. You don't default to experts when there's, say, an environmental problem and there's a pollutant that needs to be regulated. He thinks that all of that needs to go through Congress, and you don't defer to expertise ever. So basically the EPA and the FDA are going to be handcuffed, and they're not allowed to do their job. This is a guy who's for warrantless NSA spying. Now, the thing that annoys me most is, as he says, I'm an originalist. I believe in interpreting the Constitution in a very literal and straightforward way, and that's why I have the beliefs I do. Well, that's utter bullshit, and we know that's bullshit simply because of his position on the NSA. I mean, the Constitution is clear. You need a specific warrant describing a specific person to be searched, and he says, no, you don't need a specific warrant. You can just spy on whoever you want, collect their metadata, and you don't need a warrant, and you don't need a reasonable suspicion to do anything. So you're not an originalist. You're not. You cherry pick based on your own politics. So you play politics as you accuse liberal judges of being activist judges. And that's the thing that annoys me the most, is that they pretend like, we're just high-minded legal scholars who just interpret the Constitution strictly, and we don't allow our personal opinions to get in the mix. That's bullshit, and we know because of your position on the NSA spying. So even prior to these allegations, and you can make up your own mind whether or not, you're convinced by what you've heard thus far, or you want to hear more, or you think there should be some sort of process where we determine what actually happened. You could have whatever opinion you want on the allegations against Brett Kavanaugh. But what I'm here to tell you is, even prior to these allegations, not a single Democrat, not a single elected Democrat should have even considered, well, you could consider it, but after you consider it, not a single Democrat should be like, okay, I'm in favor of Brett Kavanaugh and I'm going to vote for his confirmation. Because on his judicial philosophy alone, or lack thereof, there's no way he should ever be on the court. So I'm here to say, keep your eye on the ball. Because even if, let's say, they tank Brett Kavanaugh over these allegations, okay, fair enough. But what happens the next time there's a judge or a potential justice who did not allegedly do sexual assault and he's in this position? What happens then? I'm here to say, if they believe the things he believes on the substance, Democrats should resist that person too. And what scares me is, it's almost like they lean on the scandal stuff, and then when there is no scandal stuff, they're like, well, what are you going to do? I guess we're going to have to vote for the insane Scalia clone to be on the court and ruin this country further for decades. I say hell no. You vote against him either way, because his lack of a judicial philosophy is disturbing and would set this country back decades.